All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much to Angela Washington and Keith Moore for the invitation. This has been a great day, certainly very helpful, hopefully, information. And you all are doing what my boss said earlier in terms of a suggestion, network, network, network. So I hope that you all are taking heed with that and then certainly connecting with the resources that are available to you, including our office. Um, I joined the OSTABU about 2 years ago, really for the purpose of what I'm doing here right at this moment. And that is being able to speak to underserved communities and try to assist with getting them access to information and then ultimately winning awards with the federal government. For over 2 decades, I either awarded contracts or oversaw the execution of multi-billion-dollar contracts being awarded nationwide, in particular for environmental cleanup. So 2 years ago, during 2020, when there was so much shift, going on, I really felt compelled to shift to this area and really trying to leverage my expertise to try to help our community. So again, it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here this afternoon, especially with such a distinguished, lineup of speakers. It truly is a pleasure. Um, and certainly, as was noted by many other speakers before me, it truly is a time that comes once in a generation. It really is a time for transformation in many areas of our lives. And in terms of economics, it is significant. In terms of the historical spending that is going on across the federal government, the largest consumer in the world. Um, One of the areas that is providing significant opportunity is in infrastructure of all types, but the one that we're going to focus on this afternoon in the panel is EV charging, that network. And I've got some information that I wanted to provide just to kind of level set the panel discussion, if there are slides available for that. I wanted to just quickly go through those again, just to kind of set the table of the discussion. I'm going to go through it real fast because I know that some of our panelists had other commitments and need to move on. But as those slides come up, I'll just kind of jump right in. So transportation drives our economy, as you can imagine, right? And with transportation, there comes a lot of emissions in terms of impacts to the environment and greenhouse gases. And so there is a big push on the part of the federal government to reduce greenhouse emissions. And one of the ways to do that is to, really pursue electric vehicles. Um, and in terms of the goal for the sector is that we would reduce emissions by 2050 to a net zero goal. And in August of 21, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And in August of 21, the current administration set a goal of 50% of new vehicles being sold, they would be electric by the year 2030. And for that to be realized, we, certainly have to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support electric vehicles. And that would be a network of 500,000 chargers nationwide. There's quite a bit that is going into this, billions upon billions of dollars. Multiple agencies are supporting it. And just an update on new car purchases. 1 in 10 new cars in the US is an electric vehicle purchase. And as of this year, the first half of the year, there's a 55% increase in electric vehicle sales. And so, that sale and that trajectory is really pushing for us to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to support the overall net zero goal. Next slide, please. This is an effort, as was noted, that is joint with many entities, but certainly there's a partnership with the DOE and DOT. This partnership was born out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so really the Joint Office does a lot in the way of a setting policy in terms of how this deployment is to occur. But the funding is not direct funding from the federal government. In terms of the networks, it's being deployed through the states. And so we'll get into that more in the discussion, but there are a few programs that are providing that funding to the state. One is the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. That's providing money directly to the states, and they are deploying it and awarding the contracts for the chargers to be installed. And then there's the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program, and that's also run through DOT. That is a direct program. There's many opportunities coming out of both of those. Next slide. In terms of where we are in meeting the goal, I'm not going to go through this slide too much, but we're certainly accelerating, our progress, and primarily, and as we would expect as taxpayers, all the money that's going out in these programs. So we really are moving forward and establishing the infrastructure. In 2010, we had about a little over 5,000 chargers, and now we're up to 160,000 public chargers. So it's moving really fast, but not so fast that you're not able to get in the game. And next slide talks about some of the opportunities. Well, maybe we missed a slide, but where you can find the opportunities, so we can go ahead and get to the panel. Go to driveelectric.gov. This provides access to the NEVI and the CFI opportunities. It also provides access to the state plans and how they are deploying the infrastructure with issuance of RFPs and timelines associated with those. So certainly recommend that you go to this driveelectric.gov site and you'll learn more information. Next slide. So without further ado, I want to get to the panelists, and they are all virtual this afternoon. So hopefully we can shift to Zoom. And I just wanted to provide some words of it by way of introduction of who we have with us. Okay, perfect. All right. So first we have with us Miss Tina White. She is the owner of Tina's Green Energy Solutions. She started the company in 2020 after having a very successful career in corporate America. Her company provides infrastructure and installation of level 2 and level 3 services for large Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. She's also a really great, as I've noted in my conversations with her, a real authority on the implementation of the Justice 40 initiative. If you're familiar with that, for all state departments of transportation supporting NEVI projects. Additionally, have with us Mr. Ray Addison. He is currently the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for GoStation. GoStation is deploying electric vehicle charging solutions across the U.S. for public use and organizations that are transitioning to electrification. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Scott Thorpe. He is the CEO of Skill Demand Energy, an energy efficiency company headquartered in Carmel, Indiana, with offices across the U.S. He oversees operations and drives innovation throughout the divisions of the company that include demand side management and electrification, talent acquisition, and workforce development. So thank you all for your patience and for staying on with us this afternoon. I hope that you've been able to glean some great information yourselves with the robust agenda we have here today. But we're going to go ahead and get into the questions. If you want more information on their bios, it's certainly available on the website. But just as a way of kicking off the discussion, I'd like each of you just to talk a little bit about your why in terms of starting your business or landing in the company that you are, just to kind of let us a little bit know more about yourselves. And we'll start with Ms. Tina.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My why was really stimulated by being a truck and forklift tire dealer for Michelin. Michelin started sending out information to us 3 years ago saying that they were going to be engineering tires specifically for EV cars and trucks. So I started really researching the industry and fell in love with it and really loved the installation side of the industry and the infrastructure side of the industry. So that's how I became very interested in everything related to the EV vehicles and what were the opportunities of entry to be a part of that industry. And once you make that decision that you're interested in it, just be prepared to do a lot of reading because it's a fast moving industry. And so you have to stay abreast. I start out at 5 o'clock in the morning just doing the industry reading. But it's an exciting industry, and I hope to share more with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Tina. Ray, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My why, and I'll be concise. So I spent my career in automotive, specifically with Daimler on the Mercedes-Benz passenger car side, as well as the Freightliner heavy-duty side. And being in corporate, I got a bit tired of people telling me what their plans were for me. And I said, I've got plans of my own. And after sitting in a number of board meetings where they were discussing this pivot, this transition to electrification, I quickly started to appreciate all of the opportunities that would then come about of this massive shift. So I then joined this early stage startup that is GoStation and have thrown myself completely into electrification, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
All right. Thanks, Ray. Scott, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And our why is, I think, opportunity. So I've been in the energy efficiency sector for over 2 decades. And a lot of times we didn't have a lot of the opportunity. We always had to go in and try to work and try to fight for some of those opportunities in those positions, starting from a local energy efficiency company working with cap agency. What we realize is from the construction side of it, especially when the ERA funding and stuff came out, that a lot of the things that we were doing were transferable into the industry. So as we took the step 2 decades ago and started moving in to residential, commercial, then industrial energy efficiency, we just always look at new opportunities that came out. And a lot of times we understood that some of the things that we currently were doing were very transferable. We have electricians that work for us all over the country. So when the EV opportunity came out, we just had to retool the individuals that we currently had and have them engraved in those opportunities to be able to do those installations and be able to design and be able to install EVs across the country, EV charging stations. So our part of it is opportunity. As we see those opportunities for Black and minority businesses, that we want to take individuals that may not understand that they have those transferable skills and infuse them in this industry so that we have more people that look like us doing this type of work.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I just love to hear when folks talk about their why or their stories. And, I think that there's a lot when you hear all of them, that there's like intersection, where, our community, and we're good with this too, just like seizing opportunities, seeing that, there's a need and how can we innovate to get involved in it. Scott talked about, understanding the transferability of what he's already doing, making some retooling and making some switches and being able to support it. So I thank you for those comments. It just really underscores, that the time is now and that it's not, and we talked earlier that it is somewhat difficult to work with the federal government and even state agencies, but the juice is worth the squeeze. The ROI or the upside can be significant. So jump out into the deep, and partner with folks to get it done. You don't have to do it alone. So thank you for those comments. And in terms of the next question, I tried to set the table a little bit in terms of describing, this new sector, but I'd like Ray, if you could just kind of, from your perspective, speak to the overall EV ecosystem.
Absolutely. The ecosystem for EV charging is much more than just a device. And I categorize it in 4 large categories: equipment, power source, software, and services. From the equipment perspective, you've got all types of equipment that delivers various amounts of speeds to the vehicle. You've got level 2 chargers that can deliver up to 33 miles per hour to a battery, to everything that goes up to megawatt charging that can deliver a massive amount of power to a vehicle. And in addition to the equipment that actually serves the power up to the vehicle, you've got distributed energy resources, such as on-site energy storage via battery. You've got solar components that make an EV charging deployment more efficient from a power perspective. And then you've got your power source. And I touched on it in the equipment perspective, but solar is a component that can be considered for EV charging, as well as just being tied into the grid. Being very mindful where the power is coming from and planning for it appropriately is critical when you think about the EV charging ecosystem. And then software. There are a lot of things that need to be communicated between the charger and the car and the person that's initiating the charge. So having the appropriate backend that can run the reporting, identify what's going on with the charging station remotely is critical. Also facilitates interoperability with other charging stations is critical as well, and that all happens on the back end. And then you've got software. So as it stands currently today, most charging events are initiated with the mobile app, and you have to have that particular software in place in order to initiate a charge. As the industry matures, you're going to see credit card machines and terminals added to the devices to make sure that it's accessible by all, even those who may not have a smartphone to use or just may not be advanced in terms of technology and prefer not to. And I think, finally, the last piece, the most important piece is service. These devices are newer technology. They can be a bit temperamental at times, but to ensure that we're delivering the best uptime possible so that when a family returning from vacation with 2 kids in the back, pulling up to a charging station and needing to get home, and this is their final charge, you want to make sure that unit works. So making sure that you've got the right preventative maintenance in place and the right O&M strategy in general is going to be key. And as part of the grant funding and the NEVI funding, having uptime is a metric. It's a requirement to access these funds. So in broad categories, equipment, power source, software, and services are the general framework for an EV charging ecosystem.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that broader overview of the system as a whole. And Ms. Tina, if I could ask if you would like to add anything to that in terms of the process and the resources of actually building out a functional charger.
Everyone can decide how they want to enter the space. I just chose the infrastructure and the installation side because there are a number of manufacturers of EV chargers. And I didn't want to get in a tug of war with a customer that had a preference for one. And if I didn't provide that one, then I couldn't get the installation business as well. So I really just set about how can I find corporations and government agencies who are putting in the EV chargers and finding out who are going to be the primes many times on those contracts and forming the teaming agreements with those companies. The other part of that story is also having strategic partners like Scott's and Ray. I'm going to make him a new partner, but having strategic partners so that you can have a larger capacity footprint, because these are not projects for a one-off or 1 or 2 type situation. In order to really grow a company in this space, you've got to be able to build, work at a large capacity. So I have a contract with Amazon, and that takes me all over the country for Amazon, because once they have 4 employees with EV cars at a warehouse, that's their trigger to install the EV chargers. And so you have to have a team that something happened. So you just have to.
If you're not speaking, just go on mute, and that will help the conversation.
Okay, I think that's why you have to have a large network of electrical contractors and general contractors and engineers who can also support you in states that you may not have the full capacity that you need.
All right. Well, thank you for that information, Ms. Tina. And I'm going to go to Scott. Well, Scott, are you available? I think he may be having some technical difficulties. So we'll come back to that. But Tina, I'm going to go to you again, just in terms of, what you think have been the challenges with or barriers to rapidly building out the network of chargers, and how do you think those barriers can be broken down?
Well, let's talk about the $7.5 billion that is divided among the 50 state Department of Transportation to install EV chargers every 50 miles on public highways. The way the state DOTs are putting out the solicitations, you must own or lease property within 1 mile of a public highway. So for most minority-owned businesses, we don't have that property. So we can't respond to those requests for applications or requests for proposals as a prime. So we have to figure out who are going to be the primes and how can we make ourselves known to them to be on a team in agreement with them. So today I was on a panel with the National Association of Black Women in Construction, and we had the professional engineer for Florida DOT, and they have not put out their solicitation yet. They're going to put it out as an RFA, which is a request for an application. And so one of the things to help companies get over some barriers is for those state DOTs to do a matchmaker for us with the known primes they know are going to answer those solicitations. And they're going to be primarily companies like a Shell or BP that own the fueling stations that we use now to put the gas in our cars. You're going to have companies like Pilot and Love Travel Stops that own a number of locations on public highways, as well as turnpikes or toll roads. And so you have to figure out who are going to be those primes and how do I make contact with them. And I'm very successful with using LinkedIn to identify these companies and also to make contact with them.
May I add to her comments, if that's
yes,
okay?
Please go ahead, Ray.
I agree with everything that she said, and I'll add that there are a couple of roadblocks from my perspective. From the pure blocking and tackling that is deploying charging stations, it takes a long time to get this equipment in the ground. It is a labor-intense process. It is quite nuanced, and it takes a lot of effort. And I think that also because of us being in the early days of understanding and adoption, I don't want to say that there's resistance, but there's a bit of apprehension as you start to socialize the idea with property owners and site hosts about the benefits of EV charging. So there is the discussion of awareness that takes some time. There's the contract piece that takes some time. And then you get to the construction, which takes some time. So I do believe that one of the pathways as it relates to the deployment of a site is a process, partnership, and planning. You got to hold on to those 3 Ps and really systematize a process so that you can get through these things efficiently as possible. Second to that, as it relates to grants and funding and such, as mentioned earlier, the federal funding is flowing through the states, and they have all got their own timelines and nuances and such. So if you are looking to embark on this journey, you have to be very specific about where you want to go, and you have to have a plan. And again, in the spirit of seeking help, having someone that can help you understand the landscape from state to state in terms of when applications are due and how to navigate that process is critical. I endeavored myself to try to read the 200 pages that constitute that document. I got lost. I needed help. And that Sherpa helped me develop my plan, develop my process, and deploy my strategy in a more efficient way.
Scott, are you with us? Is there anything that you'd
Yeah,
like to add?
I'm still here. No, I thought we have a few signal difficulties with the networking here, but no, I think that they summed it up pretty well. But it is a process, and there is still so much time to be part of what's going on in the EV ecosystem. And a lot of people look at some of the stations and things that are already put in place, and they think, oh, okay, if I missed the opportunity to be a part of this. One of the programs that we work on in the Pacific Northwest, particularly in Portland, Oregon, we did a test where we went out to some of the retail outlets that we serve, and we all rented EVs, and we wanted to make sure that we could go into areas and be able to charge. And what we found that on the coastal and some of the other areas, there was not a significant amount of EVs in place. And one of the stations that we went to, we actually had to wait. We had to wait over 2 hours before we could even get our cars charged, because there was a line of cars at a fast charging station, even though it only took a half an hour. There's just not enough there. So there's so much more to be done, and there's still so much opportunity. And those type of things, yourself learning what's out there and understanding some of the opportunities to be in EV, we need to make sure that that message is spread, and that and like Ray and Tina were saying, the process takes so much time to identify, and then to go out and have our engineers on a site visit determine what can initially be put in that location and what's the most efficient way to get that put in. And then once you get that in, you once you get your product, then you're choosing among multiple different products to install. So if we're talking about the EV ecosystem and how we still have opportunities to work within that, work within that infrastructure, there's a ton of opportunity and a ton of work still to be done that we have years and years to do. The time is now to get involved so that you can realize the opportunities that are there. And a lot of people don't understand the transferable skills that they have to enter into this industry.
If the EV charging business were baseball, I mean, some people would say we're in the second inning. I would contend the players are still getting on the field.
I agree.
That's where we are.
I agree. Yeah.
I agree as well. I mean, it's moving fast and it's evolving as it moves. So we don't have the solution just yet. You know, I think we're building out the solution as we go, and we need the creative minds and the innovative minds to help us to get there. And I love what Ray said, just in terms of going in with the process, you know, partnering and then executing the plan, having a plan and executing it, recognizing that, you know, right now it's really decentralized in terms of the deployment, in that it's through the states, but the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation is that centralized body that really does establish and promulgate the policy. And so I know in our discussions with that office that they are trying to do more in terms of providing information like a one-stop, and that is the driveelectric.gov website. So as states issue RFPs or RFAs, as was noted, that Drive Electric website will have that information. So you can go to one site and get information. And then once you have that information, then you can go to some of the states to drill down on it. So we are, you know, trying to do better about centralizing this rollout to the maximum extent. And I think to the comment on, you know, recognizing that much of the opportunity for smaller companies is going to be down the supply chain. You know, it's subcontracting opportunities, supporting BP, Shell, you know, Tesla, the others. So it's a matter of the federal government, as we make policy and we put policy out, is we're making requirements that the state's RFPs are indicating in a competitive space that if you get this contract, you're going to have a community development plan. You're going to have a workforce plan, and those plans need to make sure that they include DEI perspectives in them, so that you're bringing along, you know, a diverse community and opportunities to the local community. So those are things that we really need to push and put pressure on in terms of making sure those types of requirements are included in these solicitations, and they are borne out in the execution of of these sites. So thank you for that, and we certainly will be having continued conversations and making sure that these barriers that have been identified are considered as policy is rolled out. Sure.
May I ask one quick question of the panel? Do you have time?
Sure, go ahead. You want to come up or?
I'll just stand up and ask.
I have one here.
I'll come up. Tina, Ray, and Scott, thank you for being here. Very granular. Tina, when you're putting together, I heard transferable skills, putting together your team early on, which is all great news. When you're putting together your team and you're looking for transferable skills, what are those skills? Can a common electrician help you install those EV charging stations at Amazon or Pilot Pro? Because I think people want to understand, hey, sounds exciting. Ray made me even more excited. We're not even on the baseball field. We're warming up. Can I take my electrician construction skills and join your team?
Absolutely. I'll give you a perfect example. I have 2 locations in Chicago for Amazon to install. I sought out a Black-owned electrical contractor, licensed electrical contractor in Chicago, who happens to be 2 cousins who are now running the business that their great-grandfather started. They're 100 years in. And so I'm contracting with them to do that actual installation on the contract I have with Amazon. So licensed electrical contractors are very important to this process. If you're receiving federal dollars, you are required to use a licensed electrical contractor who must also complete a training course through the electrical union. One of the other ways that dollars are also going out for EV chargers is also through the local government agencies, such as your cities, your counties, and your beyond the states. The airports, the CEOs of airports are putting in electrical charging stations, as well as the public transit. So I work closely with the engineering firms who are acting as the owner's reps for all of these different government agencies. So for an example, MARTA Public Transit in Atlanta is buying electric buses now. They're getting ready to start building out a new station. And in that station, it will include all of the EV chargers. So first I sit down with the engineering firm that they've hired to design it. That relationship lets you know what is going to be the equipment recommendation, what manufacturer they're recommending for those EV chargers. So once you understand that, now you need to understand how to install those particular chargers. Got that down. Then you ask that same engineering firm, who do you think are going to be the general contractors that are going to be responding to the RFP when MARTA puts it out? There are companies that are focused on the large construction companies like Clark Construction. They're focused on EV charging. So now I know I need to make contact with Clark Construction to be a part of that team. So you have to understand the different processes as to how you actually get that installation business. The Denver airport, I had a meeting with their CEO. They're bringing all of the car rental companies under one roof next year. And in that process, they will be putting in all of the EV charging stations as well. And so when you know that kind of information, it gives you an opportunity to start planning as to how you're going to be a part of that. But that requires you to do a lot of homework and to understand that the sales cycle is somewhere around 12 to 24 months. It's not going to be, I mean, if we're in a childlike stage, I tell everybody like the 3-year-old having a temper tantrum, this is not the business, because it's not going to be, I want it right now, mommy, I want it right now. This is going to be a very long-term process. unfortunately, that also keeps a lot of us off of the playing field because we don't have the capital resources to stay in the game for the long term. And that's why I highly recommend that you start looking at strategic partners. They could be majority owned firms, and they could also be firms that look like yourself, but you have to find a strategic partners who may be better capitalized than you are, that you can work with to go after these larger contracts, because they are large contracts. It's not going to be where they call you in for one at a time. Even with the city and the counties and people like that. Also, the more you can educate the government agencies on this industry, you'll find that they are not very learned yet on this industry. So the more you can educate them, you're building that relationship with them. And so now you become their go-to person, and they're going to make you aware of opportunities before anyone else know about those opportunities. And that's what I've tried to do. I've been pretty successful as being a real authority on all aspects of EV charging, so that the customer is now leaning on to me for a clearer understanding of the marketplace.
Yeah, Tina, I'd like to add from a workforce perspective. A lot of times when we were talking about transferable skills and things of that nature, from the energy perspective, this is not uncommon. Like when we're talking about just the average electrician or average lighting technician, they don't know about these type of jobs, and they don't know that they have, like I was saying earlier, those transferable skills to be able to do this type of work. So from what we do, we keep a database open with everybody that we either work with or we contract with. And like Tina said, a lot of times these things take so long that sometimes when a person gives you a price today, a lot of times those smaller companies can't hold on to those prices or numbers. I encourage those individuals that we work with to continue to do the work that they're doing, but augment the EV opportunities in. So if they're even stretched out to where they have one the first quarter, one the second quarter, and one the third quarter, they're still doing everything that they were currently doing, but they're adding this as a new piece of business. And those, like you said, can any average electrician? Yeah, they can, but the problem is if they come in and they try to make this their core business, and it doesn't, in the time frame that it takes from inception to completion, the time frame that they're in, a lot of people can't hold that type of business without getting paid. So what we try to do is work with those individuals, bring them in, let them know the current work that they're doing is similar to the things that we do from an EV perspective, but here are the small changes that you need to make, or these are the certifications you need to get, or these are things that you need to understand about the EV market, because you already have those transferable skills. Keep doing what you're doing, and it may be you have to convince them that it's worth it in the long run, because what they're going to get initially is going to be slower than and it may not be enough to sustain them to jump all the way right into the EV business itself. But the opportunity is a long-term opportunity. This is not in most cases, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and they have to be able to have the financial wherewithal to be able to stay in the process long enough to be successful.
And thank you, Scott. I think that was one of the next questions I was going to ask, but they've already answered. And that was, what are some of the best practices or lessons learned? I think in understanding that it's a long game, it's not a short game. When you go into this long game, you don't want to desert what you've been doing successfully. Kind of bring this on as another item on your menu of services until you can get to a place where maybe you can focus on this area. Partnering, it's so important to be able to tackle this space. Is get others that are doing it or providing other aspects of the overall planning or process and go in it together. And then, as was stated, previously, you have to be persistent. You have to be patient, and you need to be learned. You need to do the reading and understand what you need to do. So with that, I think, we are wanting to open it up to audience questions or comments, and I do that at this time. Yes, sir.
I did want to ask, I know this is a new industry, relatively speaking. Are there not code of federal regulations as well as, National Electric Code and stuff that have the requirements called out?
Yes, certainly. I mean, in the NEVI program, it describes the various requirements and laws and regs that go along with it, as will each of the individual RFPs that are soliciting for the services that are needed.
Exactly. So as far as the skill set goes, this is nothing complicated outside of what a normal electrician would do that's qualified and licensed to operate.
That's correct.
Right.
I mean, that's correct. And that's, goes to all the different areas of the supply chain, whether you do software for some other application. This is just a new application, but it's still grounded in code, and code. So then you know how to, get into this space. So yeah, it's definitely many transferable skills, just a new ecosystem to get into.
All right.
Tamara, but I will add this, and Ray also made this point. I don't want people to think it's quite that easy, because even if you are an electrical contractor and if you're only doing residential work, I'm not going to contract with you for the EV chargers. I'm only going to contract with you if you're comfortable doing commercial work or have some history doing commercial work. So if you're working on construction sites that's building new schools or fire stations, those are the contractors. If you're just doing ceiling fans and outlets in a person's residential, I won't contract with you, because the EV chargers do have very particular nuances, and it's beyond just putting in the charger. You got to be able to calculate loads. You got to sometimes bring in an engineer. One of the sites we're getting ready to do in Florida for Amazon, we have to have the engineer to come in and look at it. We're going to tear up in the entire parking lot to put all the wiring and piping in. And so it is more complicated than just your average residential electrical contractor. So I really want to be clear about that. You are looking for a person who has experience on commercial job sites from the electrical standpoint.
And I'll add, I'll
And as you had mentioned,
amen to everything she just said. And the thing that I'll add to that is, for those looking to get into the business, again, it's not a casual affair. I've been burned a few times. And what I would tell folks that are thinking about getting into this business, it's enticing with the money, it's enticing with the opportunity, but don't sell something that you can't deliver on. Just don't do it. If you're going to get in it, be focused and committed and master what you're going to do, but don't just jump into the game because you're tantalized by the dollar signs, because it looks good. It looks bad for your brand. It looks bad for mine. And we all start to lose as a result of that. So don't sell what you can't deliver on is my advice to everyone.
Correct. And one of you mentioned earlier that along with the RFP comes these specific requirements. And I suppose a contractor, if he can't meet it, he can't meet it, like you're now saying, which I understand.
The contractor actually will not be the prime. On the DOT NEVI projects, they are not going to be the prime, because they don't own the property 1 mile of a designated public highway. So the prime is going to be a Shell, as you know, who you go and and fill your car up with gas, BP, Texaco, 7-Eleven. Those are going to be the primes. Now you have to figure out how to get on their teams as a subcontractor for providing the infrastructure and the electrical, and then again the maintenance, because under the DOT NEVI projects, they have to keep those chargers maintained for 98% uptime on an annual basis. Otherwise, they won't be reimbursed the 80% of that grant dollar that they're putting out first. And they're using what is called a P3 model, which is a public-private partnership. So Shell, BP, Pilot, they're going to pay for everything first. Then the government, DOT, will come back and monitor them for a year to 24 months to see if the chargers are performing to that 98% uptime. then they can get reimbursed the 80%. But out of pocket, they're going to, if they get reimbursed the 80%, they have spent 20% of putting in the EV chargers on sites that they own that is going to make money for them in the end.
Well, thank you very
Thank you
much.
for
I've
that
learned
clarification.
quite a bit. Thank you.
Another comment or question, sir?
So thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. My question, since this is an Oz conference, you know, and 15% of the United States is designated opportunity zone. For example, Go Station, are you focused on putting some of your chargers in opportunity zones?
Yes, we are. And I'll expand that to say that we are focused on underserved communities. And we recognize that there are opportunity zones that aren't necessarily in underserved communities, and we look at those as well. There are some substantial tax advantages if you're buying the parcel, installing charging stations, and it just starts to stack. So I'd say yes, and we are.
Yeah, it's a great way to leverage your dollars and, you know, get the underserved community served and employed. And by doing that, you know, you're going to get tax-free treatment in 10 years. You're using tax-deferred dollars to finance these. So it's a great way to stretch your dollars. So hopefully everybody's doing that.
Yeah,
Thank you for that comment.
It's the right thing to do. I mean, when you think about making sure that underserved communities have this technology, because if we're not intentional in looking at these locations, they're often overlooked. So the money is important, the unit economics matter, but we also have to live by a purpose and make sure that there's equity in what we're doing with this innovation.
Thank you. And any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Oh, you're right here. All right.
How you doing? My name is William Barker out of Jacksonville, Florida. Again, thank you for your presentation. I had a question for you, Ray, as far as with the Go stations. Are you familiar with any programs that are aimed towards small businesses or commercial businesses with the rollout of electric commercial equipment as far as like landscaping equipment? Do you guys have something in your plan aimed towards having charging stations for businesses at those gas stations and those businesses and offering that to them now that they have that equipment available?
So yes, we are, but it was kind of by accident. So we deployed a distributed network of EV charging stations across 5 different port locations. And they've got drayage vehicles, forklifts, and other equipment there that used the charging network in addition to the vehicles before they found their way, passenger cars that found their way to car dealerships. So I think that vertical is important as we start considering what the reach of electrification will be. You've got the commercial vehicles class 4 through 8 that are going to be electrified in different orders. And then you've got forklifts and others that are going to need to be electrified too. So being mindful and intentional with future proofing and considering all verticals is important. And we are doing that as a part of our business now going forward.
Thank you.
All right, I think one more question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Hicks with Power Solutions, and I'm an EV charger manufacturer. And Miss Tina is my fabulous friend. I wanted to just bring up attention to the most vulnerable in our communities. My brand is She EV. I manufacture out of Fort Worth, Texas, and I'm the only EV charger manufacturer that also installs their own chargers. And we advocate for safer places for women to charge.
Mm-hmm.
Currently at night, most women do not charge at night in public places because the charging is in the back, on the side, in the dark. and it's just not safe. But it's not just women, it's also other most vulnerable in our communities, being the elderly and the disabled. And so we really need more people in this market just to get in it, period. I call it the wild, wild East because we're on the East Coast, East Coast, but it's open. It's like the rules are still so lax that a lot of people are doing, can really create their own lane.
Yep.
But we also, we work with the Department of Energy. I was just on Capitol Hill in Senator Schumer's office to advocate for those safer places. We really, really got to think about people. And when this money come with infrastructure, once it's spent, it's gone. So we need to be advocating to our city council and our state and our local cities to put these chargers in safer places. But I'm biased. I want a lot of people to get in energy. I'm an electrical contractor. I'm a union. I'm also a journeyman electrician. So I want a lot more. We need more, not only more women, but also more minorities to get into energy, period. Find somebody and ask them, how they can get in, and just hit your wagon to somebody else's. Basically. Yeah.
Here, here. Yes. Well, thank you for that. And, I think we're at our time. I would just like to ask the panelists just to provide any closing remarks, anything that you didn't get to say that you'd like to say now as we close out. Just a quick 30 seconds each.
Well, I agree with Tanya that the industry is wide open. It's many opportunities. There are plenty of grants for workforce development. So if you're a company that want to focus on workforce development, on how you train people to install the EV charging stations, things of that nature, it's a lot of doors that you can walk into. All of the utility companies are putting in the EV charging stations. So there's opportunities to subcontract with them for installation and to sell them the chargers as well. All of your public transit in your city and counties are going to be putting out RFPs for installation and EV charging. So you just have to really do the homework. I tell people, read the bipartisan infrastructure law maybe 3 times because you need to know how this funding is going to be deployed. And then once you understand how the funding is going to be used, then you could build your business around that funding.
Thank you. Scott?
I would definitely agree that there needs to be more access to getting more minorities and more people in women into the industry. I think it's it's one of the things that we advocate for at Skill Demand, but also when we are doing there's a lot of utilities that have mentor programs, and to just to throw that out there, if you know someone that's looking to get in the industry, that's the kind of thing they need to look at. Like you said, they need to hitch their wagon to somebody and find someone that's willing to mentor them and bring them into this industry. I just did a mentor protegeship with ComEd, and I think that those are some of the people that I brought in and talked to during that program. They had all those talents and all those skills. They just needed someone to tell them some of the basic things of how to get in this industry. So yeah, if people that are listening to this, they know people that are trying to get into the industry, they need to look at utilities and they need to look at the federal government, and they need to see if there's some programs where they can do a 6-week to 12-week mentor programship or have someone guide them and hold their hand. I always say that don't just come through and open the door. I want to take it off the hinges so you can walk through it and follow me through that path. So I want to make sure everybody has that full opportunity. If they put the door back up, don't worry, we got enough tools to take it back down, and we can just keep on coming through that same door so that everyone has that opportunity. So thanks so much. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, Scott. And then lastly, Ray.
I'd simply say the game is afoot. It's moving fast. Get in and learn it and take advantage of it. That's it.
Yes, and I would echo those sentiments and all that the panel has discussed this afternoon. It definitely is a great opportunity, an industry that is only going to grow and expand, and creativity. I love what you're doing, ma'am, in terms of supporting marginalized communities or the most vulnerable. I mean, there's a lot of niches that still can be carved out in this, and so I would just encourage you all to continue to seek out information. Go to driveelectric.gov. You'll learn more information there in terms of the current opportunities, even the technical assistance that the Joint Office provides as well to help you navigate this broad spectrum of opportunity. So certainly you can reach out to the OSTBU office as well at DOE. My contact information is tamara.miles@hq.doe.gov. I won't be with you all tomorrow to network, but I would certainly hope that you all would reach out to us. We do provide one-on-one consultation, reviewing capability statements and doing our best to match you with the program office that we think, needs what you're offering. So definitely appreciate this opportunity, and thank you to my distinguished panelists. You all certainly delivered. I appreciate your patience and standing by with us. I know we're well past the time and you had other obligations. So thank you so much for prioritizing this today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.